Hello and welcome to episode number 114 of Killer POV. This is Plagues and Horror. Plagues. It's already begun.
And it's your third happy birthday.
My
great. Happy birthday, Rob.
Let's just keep celebrating.
I think you get 3 episodes where we celebrate. Just because I looked over and saw napkins saying happy birthday.
I didn't find paper towels, so I got happy birthday napkins.
Rob, one more time.
This is out of control, but thank you.
And out of proportion.
I am one of your hosts, Rob G. Sitting with me is Elric Kane.
That's me.
That's Elric Kane. Rebekah McKendry.
What up?
Boom, here we all are. And right off the top, we got to give a shout out and thanks to our friend Dennis Atherton, who, big supporter, comments on the show, has given us beer money in the past. And today, sir, I'm staring at some delicious Mulberry Street pizza.
Huge
One
pizza.
of my favorite places. So you have paid for the pizza and beer tonight. Thank you.
For our guests, too. That's very kind of you.
For our guests.
Yeah.
That's very kind of you. And Dennis just wanted us to mention and do a shout out to Patrick Bromley, who we should do just in general, give a thanks to. Patrick hosts a podcast called F This Movie. And that's how Dennis found our show. That's how a lot of you out there found our show, because Patrick wrote a great article about a year ago kind of recommending the 10, not best, but 10 Killer POV episodes that would be a good start to get into the podcast. And I know we've heard from a lot of people that came to us through that. So
I'll tell you what, last week's not a bad one.
No, that was a great episode.
One of the golder ones.
Well, I had fun.
And also, here's to Patrick for agreeing with me about Green Inferno. Sorry, guys. I saw that this week, but neither of you can confirm nor deny.
I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it yet.
I actually am kind of excited to see it. But
I will say this. I saw a movie last night and the trailer played, and I turned to the guy next to me and said, if it's anything like this trailer, I would love this movie. But because they're not showing any of the comedy in the trailer just looks scary and intense, and I'm like, oh, this looks good. But wait till you get to fart jokes.
Oh, no.
All right,
that's
so
going to lose me.
Somebody will love that, you know.
All right, so before we dive in, I actually had a couple. We don't do this often, but every once in a while there's some things that I want to give a shout out to or promote or plug or whatever. So I have a couple of quick ones. Right off the top, I just want to let you guys know The Devil's Carnival, Darren Bowsman and Terrence Sedunich's new sequel that they did. The tour has begun as of today's episode. Again, you know, I had mixed feelings only because I'm not exactly a musical guy.
He's not a musical guy in general.
I'm not the perfect judge for it. But I will say this. I think what they're doing is really special and unique, and they're taking it on the road and having a whole show before it and sticking around for Q&A and the Q&A thing after. And I don't know, it's taking a movie and kind of making a little bit more of an event over the whole night. And
we know for a fact, from knowing him, that they do it for their fans. They don't make those to make money.
Yeah.
They tour to pay back the cost of what they've spent, you know, but it's never to get rich.
Yeah, this is definitely like Terrence and Darren's passion project.
Right. And I mean, they stick around for quite a while after the show and meet everybody. So, you know, just wanted to give a shout out, you know, check it out. Go to thedevilscarnival.com and see if it's anywhere near. And if it is, just, you know, take a night out and go check it out. Because I think that would be kind of neat.
Yeah.
Also, now this is a weird thing because I often have said previously that I'm not, you know, it's difficult to pick fundraising campaigns to support, you know, because everybody's got a Kickstarter, everybody's got an Indiegogo and things that they want to make. But that said, I have a personal connection to these two that I just want to mention briefly. The first is a filmmaker we mentioned a lot here from Long Island, New York, named Chris Garitano.
Oh, hell yeah. His new project looks awesome.
Yes, he did a great documentary called Horror Business, and he just completed another one called Montauk Chronicles. And I have a personal connection to the project that he's got an Indiegogo campaign for right now. It's called South Texas Blues. And essentially, I've read this script that, you know, I tried to help him get it made several years ago in another time, in another place. But essentially, his favorite movie of all time is The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original Tobe Hooper one. And he's crafted a script and a story, and I've seen all the storyboards about the making of that movie. And I always love, you know, making of movies. But
especially that movie.
What's unique about it is it's kind of like the making of Texas Chainsaw Massacre by way of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Like the Toby character goes into all these weird, elaborate dream sequences that kind of inspire what we know to be, you know, the best scenes of the movie and stuff like that. So it's really weird. It's really elaborate. It's really out there. But I think it could be really special if he can get it made. And he's got an Indiegogo right now to try to make that happen. So
do you know what they need? What the kind of figure is?
I can't remember. I think they're rating 80,000, I think. But again, if you watch his previous movies, Montauk Chronicles, even though it's a documentary, half of it is narrative. And if you see what he does with the narrative segments with very little money, it's like he's a very, very talented guy, and I have no doubt that he could pull this thing off. So, if you're a Chainsaw fan, at least check it out, see if it's to your liking, and if you want to support it, support it. And then the other one is something that Michael Felsher is doing. A lot of people that listen to our show should know who Michael is. He runs Red Shirt Pictures and does a lot of the amazing special features that you see on Scream Factory releases and Synapse and all that stuff. Several years ago, he made a documentary about Creepshow called Just Desserts. And he tried to get it on the U.S. Blu-ray release or whatever, but, I think Warner Brothers owns it here, just had no interest in doing anything with the property because that's how they are with horror movies. But it did get released on a UK DVD edition of Creepshow several years ago. And it's great. It's a feature-length doc. He talks to pretty much everyone except for Stephen King. But everyone else is in it. George, Tom Savini and all them. Lots of great behind-the-scenes footage and stuff. I bought an import of the DVD because I love fucking Creepshow, like I'm sure a lot of people do. But anyway, what he's doing is he's got an Indiegogo as well to make a U.S. Blu-ray of it. And there's no perks, there's no nothing. It's just literally a $25 pre-order.
That's great.
He just needs the money to press it. And
has he got the permission to press it?
Yeah. Yes, he does, because it's it falls for the most part in the
fair use.
The fair use in terms of what he used. I don't know if there's much footage from the movie itself, but he did like an elaborate. I think there's like a comic book opening to it and stuff, and a lot of Savini's footage from making the movie. It's a great documentary, and the weird thing is, by fate, all those years ago, he shot it all in HD. So it is perfect for a Blu-ray release.
Cool.
Nice.
And again, I think it's great. It's called Just Desserts, and I'm definitely going to pre-order one because it's worth it.
There's also a 50-minute bonus episode of The Projection Booth, that other show, where they're talking, which I haven't listened to, but I downloaded it, so I was curious.
And he explains the whole story behind the project, why it didn't come out in the U.S., and why he's doing this now. But I just think that's a cool project to support. And again, it's not really the thing's made. It's just like, look, we need X amount of money to print them as Blu-rays. So just pre-order it and it's yours. So
that's great.
So that's that one. And my final plug of the show.
Sure is shilling a lot this week. My God.
I didn't see a lot of movies, so I wanted to show.
I know. That beer's frozen now. And
no, just quick shout out at, Elric's been talking about a lot of podcasts that you've been getting into.
Yeah.
I really want to put a shout out to the Damn Fine podcast, which is hosted by Tony Giles and Scott Johansson. It is an all soundtrack podcast, all particularly genre soundtracks, and particularly soundtracks on vinyl. And I was a guest on the show pretty early on in their run, but I've been listening to it a lot, and I absolutely love it. Cool. The way that we... people feel like they're getting in on our conversation when they listen to our show. For them, I feel like I'm chilling out with two English dudes in their living room spinning records. Like that's what they do. They go back and forth and play, oh, this is the soundtrack I bought this week. Check out a few seconds of it, and back and forth. And through it, like I went and bought The Dance of Reality, the Jodorowsky movie. I hadn't even seen the movie yet, but they played a little bit of the soundtrack, which is done by his son. Awesome. And it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous music. So I picked that up right away. This week they had a great interview with Disaster Piece. Really, really great chat about
It Follows.
It Follows, and a lot of his video game music, which I was unfamiliar with, but which is excellent. So,
but Rob, the problem with It Follows that I couldn't fix because I'm a cinematic genius.
Oh,
that's in the news too. We can leave that for now.
So those are all my pimpage. Let's get to movie scene.
Yeah.
Well, I could dial it back to more radio. No, because I was driving all weekend again, dropping a kid off. So I actually caught up. These are just more. I won't go in depth on them, but I want to recommend, which our horror viewers, listeners would love. The Alexander Aja episode of the Bret Easten Ellis is absolutely essential.
Great,
like it's just fantastic. Yeah. The Ty West one I went back and listened to, and I was not going to because I think I've interviewed him 3 times on 3 different formats, or maybe 4. But
it's great.
I had never heard anything about his childhood.
Yep.
I'd never heard about his school life. I'd never heard any of that part.
Of the stories,
and it was really interesting to hear like a very normal upbringing, but kind of how he came to horror. And there's still a few things in there. The thing about this podcast that I would recommend is, and I think all podcasts should go with this, including us sometimes, is when you try to do an overview of somebody, you're just always you're rushing, but when you take that specific thing, and Bret Easten Ellis seems to pick someone, and then just like literally it's basically one question or one movie of theirs that he hones in on for the most part. Some of these, he jumped around a bit, but it seems like he's really got one interest to bring them on. I find that to be really, really interesting. That's why his diatribes, he'll like talk for like 10 minutes before he asks them a question. But there's two non-horror ones that I got to recommend because if they're like just unbelievable. For one, I'm driving there going, you know what? You know who I haven't heard of in the last 20 years? Molly Ringwald. And I'm driving up going, like, what happened? And he's obsessed with The Breakfast Club 30th. And they've known each other for a long time because, he was a 20-year-old art star as well. He published his first book at 20 and became this big star. And it was fascinating. And there's stuff in there I didn't realize that she was more or less in love with John Hughes at the age of 14, 15. And he's a grown adult man married. And Bret just keeps going like, did he ever want to do something? Because clearly you're his muse, blah, blah. And she's like, no, but I kind of got the feeling he's like me. And they keep talking about how he's a Republican and no one knows he's a Republican. Wow. And it was just a fascinating discussion to Hughes and equally great, if not maybe my other, besides that Bloom one, might be my favorite podcast this year. Other than that was Matthew Modine. And it's only about Full Metal Jacket. And so it's basically about Kubrick. And Matthew Modine went there for 3 months to make a movie called Full Metal Jacket. He was there for 2 years and basically kind of ruined his life, but he wrote a diary about how it was ruining his life. He was kind of losing his mind because basically one of the techniques he said that Kubrick would use is to delay and keep shooting forever. He'd just say things like, well, the actors don't know their lines. He'd just make shit up to make chess pieces to make the actors look bad and feel bad and just kept going. And Vincent D'Onofrio and Modine literally almost came to physical blows at one point, even though they were old friends before it. Yeah. And it's all psychological games. It is so interesting because no one really talks about Kubrick in the way I want to hear. Everyone's just, a genius, this and this. And it's like, no, but I want to hear how he goes about it. And it's a good show. So that was fun. And that was just driving. So if you're a very long drive, these are all like about an hour, hour 20. In terms of TV, I caught up on the first episode of Fear the Walking Dead as the resident Walking Dead fan of our room. And also as a big Cliff Curtis is one of New Zealand's great actors. Really one of our best, and has been working in America for like the last decade, and everything you just don't know you see him. And he's the lead, and it's really fun. I think the casting's really good. It was really hard to tell where it's not hard to tell where it's go. It's kind of hard to tell what the point is at the moment. My hope for the show, I think it's only 6 episodes. My hope is that it starts to move really fast after the start because I'd heard somewhere along the lines that they promised it would catch up quicker, so it wouldn't just stay a prequel show. It would actually just catch up to the timeline, which I don't know how they'll do because this is about a family. So if a family starts, and they're how they're going to last. So, but I really liked the actual adult relationship between them, and it was enough. Like there's a lot of flaws, and we kind of know this, and it's kind of like more like a Romero world. But it's set in LA, and so I'm curious. And it wasn't cheesy, everyone's an actor, that kind of bullshit of LA. It was just two teachers. It was very grounded. I'm curious. I'll keep watching. I think it's only I think it's 6-episode run. And then goes back to the other series, and who knows what their plans. But it was the biggest television show in the history of TV.
I was reading so many complaints about it online.
Yeah, it's sort of a mixed bag. I mean, I think people who like Walking Dead are always complaining that things are boring. That was slow. It was slow, but it's also kind of the point of setting up the story, Yeah. We'll see. Again, I hate to judge things on the first episode because I've seen so few good first episodes. I'm
looking forward to it.
And I'll throw it over to you guys as we talk about the one movie we all shared this week.
Yes, we all saw Sinister 2 this week. Rob and I saw it at, I guess we'll call it the premiere.
Yeah. It was opening night.
The LA opening night that the whole company and crew went to. Yeah. And then Elric, I guess you saw it later.
I was doing the Hollywood Underground Film Festival, which was a rousing success, and I got to spend the whole night with Gallagher drinking and doing weird things, and Jessica Cameron. It was a very weird crew we ended up with, but we had a lot of fun, so it was well worth it. But so what did you guys think? We also had one of the loveliest directors ever in here.
Yes, Karen.
Well, yes.
I loved it. Loved it.
Okay. Where'd the love come from? I think
Bekah thought it was okay.
I thought it was okay. There were parts that I really liked, and then there were parts that I thought were really kind of wonky.
And so I'm curious to hear what you said. No, you know why? Because look, it's pretty simple for me. I only saw the first one once, and I feel like I saw it several weeks after it came out, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so scary," but whatever. Which was the same way I saw Insidious. Was just way after all the hype died down. So I only saw it once. So I only have my memory of the first movie. And then what I remember about the first movie, I just like that this one is not that at all. Like, yes, it picks up. Yes, there's some threads and there's some new characters and stuff. But you know, they take the angle about the kids and their responsibility in what's happening, and that is front and center in this new movie. And I just thought that was fascinating, like getting to see it from the kids' perspective and seeing exactly how they are driven to do these terrible things. So I really like that a lot. I like the unconventional characters, like obviously the what's his name, Deputy so-and-so from the first one.
But he's no longer, it was in the credits, we actually laughed out loud last night watching it. It said former Deputy so-and-so. So it was actually kind of funny. That was
I mean, you know, he's an odd, weird character to be a lead. To be a lead,
it's really strange.
It's strange, but I kind of dig that. And I was trying to make an analogy, but I couldn't think of a good, you know, like,
it's a little too much Dewey in them, though.
Yeah,
that's it.
Dewey. I'll give you a little, like a David Arquette Dewey thing. But I like that it was kind of like Nightmare is not a good example. Like, you know, Nightmare 1 they set up the origin and the story, whatever, and then Nightmare 3 you get kind of like the new mythology, like you get to hear about Freddy's mother and all that stuff. It's a bad analogy that I'm saying, but I liked that they expanded upon the mythology that they created with the first one, and most importantly, that you still don't really see or know anything about. What's his name?
Bagul.
Like, I loved that. I was like, he's still kind of the pinhead.
I mean, if they could keep it going, like if this one does well, it would be a good thing. I saw it with Matt, and I'm definitely sitting there going, yeah, but I kind of want to know what is the Bagul thing, and I didn't feel like I got any more of that. But
they gave a little bit.
Yeah. There was a very cool. I'm not without spoilers. There was a very cool. Probably one of my favorite parts of the movie with the radio, and hearing some of the backstory that's played out through a radio, and that was really interesting. And I almost want to see that movie. It's very rare you'll ever hear me say I want a prequel movie, but I feel like with this mythology set in a different country,
the vintage horror set in a different country and a pre-contemporary time
more
period,
about the myth,
I thought it would have been really cool.
Just ain't quite. If I was them, I would go radically different if they do another one. I had some major issues with the tone. You know, like I could literally see two scripts
that's
fighting the tone. And I actually, weirdly enough, even though I'm not this guy, I thought the stuff that had like a slightly comic tinge to it was stronger than the stuff that's just trying to be a scary, serious movie, which surprised me because usually I go, like with Sinister, what I like about the first one is that serious tone.
Yeah.
It was pretty telling that when you wrote to me, I asked you how you liked it, and you said, well, funnily enough, the one part of the first film that you don't like, which is the end, is the whole movie. And there's some truth to that. So for me, it's a problem on the script level. You know, like my problem with isn't how it's put together. I'm watching a movie going, I wish that hadn't been the story exactly, because it's for me spending too much. I guess I didn't find the kids at all creepy, so I'm therefore just kind of watching stuff. I really liked, my favorite scenes are just like little relationship scenes between the two adult characters.
You know what?
They're kind of fun.
I know. I've read some people say that they think that that's weird, but I like that was natural. That was like normal to me, like normal life, like the weirdness between like Shannon Sossaman.
No, I like those
and
scenes.
that guy, and it makes perfect sense. It's like, well, you're the first person to defend me in a long time. So of course, you know, like I don't know, I liked the sweetness and awkwardness.
And there's some good set pieces.
Yeah.
There's some really, like, you know, towards the end, there's a nice big set piece, but I just don't know if I cared, because I wasn't scared ever. I mean, I will say that for me personally, like Bagul felt like it was kind of a pop-up book thing, and you know, a lot of that, like, you know, to Kieran, it's like you inherit a script. And the tones in that script, and I don't know if the movie I would have loved could have come from that script. To be honest, I feel like they maybe just chose, for me, the wrong story follow up. Like I kind of wish they'd chosen something like we're saying, something that's in the story. There's a couple times hinted at other stories where I'm like, ooh, that would have been interesting. Maybe this was a little too similar, but with a very different vibe tone. You know,
I didn't mind the setting. I kind of liked that it had this weird kind of Children of the Corn element going on. Literally, Children of the Corn. And I kind of liked the church next door, and I liked all that, but it was just the script for me. It felt so tweaked. It felt like it had gone through 500 different drafts of people going, you know what, this needs this, and it felt like it had too many cooks.
It is weird. Like the comic tones are really quite funny, because the character will do something, but then the next beat there'll be something really serious. And and this is spoiler free because you know he's going to see it. A certain character sees a ghost at one point in the middle of the film. And then the next couple scenes never kind of mentions it and doesn't seem spooked. No. And I'm just like, dude, I kept turning to the guy next to me, and every 5 seconds I had to go, hey, just so you know, he just saw a fucking ghost. Like, seriously, you go back and go, hey, everyone. And I'm like, no, you just saw, witnessed, face to face, a fucking ghost.
And so I think that was what drove me crazy, is it was just this tonal roller coaster ride where it was like, this is funny. And the funny scenes were great. Okay, now we're back to serious. And there was like never any acknowledgement of the spooky shit that's going on when we're back in the funny scenes. And I liked the two boys, but I did not like all of the scenes with the kids, because kids in horror films are creepy when it's nighttime and you see one run across the kitchen really quick and you're like, what the fuck was that, small human? But when the ghost kids are like, hey, what up, Brian? Come downstairs and let's hang out. I mean, it lost it for me.
Explaining.
I felt maybe we got a little too much of the kids, but whatever. I'm still fine with it. And to me, it's like, that thing that Savage Steve Holland said when he was on our show very early on. It's like, what, for me, horror, I want to see shit that I could never imagine myself, And to me, it's like, that's what I've liked about these Sinister movies. I don't know if I'm just going in with such a clean slate. It's like, well, I couldn't have thought this up. It's cool. It's
I think it still has a lot of potential in there. I think that's what's, like you said, there's really no more, we haven't gone any further into Bagul. So if they decide to keep,
clean as ever.
I don't have any clue how this did over the weekend. Did you hear it all?
I think it was number 3.
Yeah, but I don't think it did nearly as well as they were hoping.
Yeah, and
but I know it hasn't opened in certain overseas areas.
Yeah. And it certainly doesn't deserve the score it's getting on Rotten Tomatoes.
No, definitely not.
And so Joe Hill wrote a really interesting article looking at analytics and like how it doesn't make any sense. Basically, these analytics, comparing how these points come from iTunes and
most of the stuff that I've been reading were not 100% negative reviews. They were kind of like, you know what, it's not as good as the original. The tone's kind of wonk, but there's some decent stuff in it. And then somehow that translates into a splat on Rotten Tomatoes. Right. So I'm completely confused.
But there were also 90% of the horror reviews of it started with, well, I really hated the first one, but it's like, well, then why did you review the second one if you didn't like it?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got voices like Joe Hill, he claimed it was one of his favorite films of the year. Your buddy Jerry said it might be his favorite horror film of the year. So it's
wow,
so
it's really polarizing.
I don't know. Tone is a funny thing. I really do think that's a big part of it. I mean, script and tone, but like tone, I think the scenes that work for me are really interesting, and then when there's little bits that take me out, it's too much to get back in. But
and the jump scare. I mean, like you, I was not scared, but it was very traditional. Yeah, auditory jump scares. If I had had earplugs in, I wouldn't have even known that it was a horror film for the most part, because that's all it was like some weird shadow and then a really loud sound boom.
And it does raise a really interesting question about scripts, and to me, and doing sequels, and what can the director do once you get given a script? There's no way. Honestly, I remember I turned to Matt last night and go, I don't think David Fincher could make that much better. I don't think if that's the script you get, what else can you add unless you get to rewrite it? I mean, unless you have a lot of power to kind of push it, because it just felt kind of A to B to me.
Well, I mean, it's Scott's movie technically. Right. Because Scott wrote and directed the first one.
The same, the co-writer, what's his name? Robert.
They both wrote the second one too. So I wonder if if he had executed it, it would have been a different thing.
That could have been the tonal tension.
But I still think Kieran did a really good job with it, and I'm looking forward to whatever he does next.
And best news of all is it doesn't, this is always when I'm happy, is it doesn't matter for him because he just got his new movie all lined up.
The She.
And that makes me really happy, because then
horror movie.
You don't want to be, because you don't want to be just tied to the whatever, sequel, especially because you're, it's not all in your control. So I'm excited. And he's going back to Ireland for it. So
Which is awesome.
Congrats if you're listening.
Yeah.
Anyone see anything else?
I did see, and I won't go into a review, but I saw, the film that we're going to be talking to people about today. And all I'm going to say is I thought it was really cool and a really fun, polished, slick sequel. So with that, I guess is that everything?
I watched the first few episodes. I got really curious about Salem season 2 after we'd been talking about it last week. So I broke down and bought the first few episodes off Amazon.
Okay,
so fucking cool.
So do you see what he meant by it's going elevated?
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, cool. It goes full balls out, crazy gore. Just I don't even know how they're getting that stuff on TV.
I gotta say, we do a lot of shows. We've done 100 and something shows, and it's if we get kind of just enwrapped in a guest and talking to someone, I found that endlessly fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I've heard from a lot of people that now are giving Salem a shot because of hearing Adam on the show.
So I'm telling you, make it to second season, because second season is first season. It's definitely got a lot of gore and horror nuances and some really cool stuff, but second season, man, they're going crazy places. So
anyway, the film I liked, and it's coming out soonish,
Soonish. Well, before that, last thing. It's actually a documentary. I obviously Green Inferno is coming out next month, and I've been kind of getting back into cannibal films again. So I picked up Cannibal Holocaust and Cannibal Ferox from Grindhouse Releasing.
Yes.
On the Cannibal Ferox,
I didn't know Ferox was out yet.
Ferox came out. Yes.
Oh, I got to see it.
On the Ferox Blu-ray is an excellent documentary. I think it's about an hour long, called Eaten Alive, The Rise and Fall of the Italian Cannibal Film. It was put together by Caleb Waddell, who has done a ton of stuff for Fangoria.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, that's the thing. I don't know much about this subgenre besides those two titles that I just told you. And there's not a ton, but there's a handful. So I really like this because this doc was a really great, 101 on why the Italians started making all these kind of cannibal films. And
I think I asked that on the show once, and I didn't have an answer. Was it because there was lots of international travel, and they wanted to?
I think they were born out of the Mondo films.
Yes, exactly. Those Mondo films did one of them did well in Europe.
I get a gold star right now.
But I'm always looking for something deeper than that, something about the culture.
Because if you look at the Mondo films, there were a lot of them coming out of Europe. The original one was Mondo Cane, I think it was, or something like that. But all of them, they would be mixed. If we think about Faces of Death, it was the same setup where they're mixed of real life footage of executions and things like that, and then they would have these reenactments of person being attacked by giant leech. But one of the things that they always included was documentary footage of trips to the Amazon while people, they never showed people being eaten, but it would be and this group used to be cannibals, and then they would show them with creepy makeup on, and so it kind of got bigger.
Even with that though, there's got to be something in an Italian that goes, oh, this is interesting, for that group to then want more of them, if you know what I mean. There's something happening in your society if you were craving to see that.
Yeah, no,
because it's so weird.
You have to see the doc, because it did one of them did well in one area, and then it's all right, so now the producers want another movie, but it has to have a naked woman in the Amazon, because that's the criterion. Now it's oh wait, now there was animal violence that did good in that one, so now we need more of that.
What was the one that kickstarted it? Man from Deep River?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
I'd love to see a movie made, how we talk about your Texas Chainsaw one, but about the making of Cannibal Holocaust and the trial. Because the actors thinking they're in a snuff film and then going into trial afterwards. It would have been insane,
Yeah, no, it's really good. And again, you go through all of them, and it's fun to see Lenzi, I think it was Lenzi who directed. Yeah,
he did that one.
Umberto, he's a snarky man.
Okay, cool.
And it sounds like him and Deodato have a fun little rivalry.
Okay. Yeah.
And they have no qualms about talking about each other in this doc. Although he keeps putting in, he's oh, well, my good friend Deodato. He's but I really did it first. He's the only reason he did it is because I turned it down and then they offered it to him,
nice.
The Cannibal movie or whatever.
Wow.
But that's really cool. I strongly recommend that.
So anyway, back to what I almost finished 3 times. I saw a movie called Contracted 2. I thought it was a lot of fun, really well put together, and the cool thing about it, it's really different from the first. The first, I'd say, is more like it feels like a sexual STD kind of thing. The second one is really just straight virus plague movie, and it's a lot of fun. And so we're going to be on in a minute with the big baddie from the movie, Morgan Peter Brown, who's been here before, and the director and VMA nominated director is going to the MTV Awards, Josh Forbes.
Yes.
Speaking of plagues on this earth, it's Morgan Peter Brown, Josh Forbes. Welcome. Won't get better than that.
What an intro.
How's the pizza?
Delicious. Thank you.
Yeah, that's Morgan Peter Brown.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So glad to be back.
He's going to behave and not interrupt today. Or yell or be loud.
Thank you, Rob.
Or are you putting on the
It was my birthday.
Can we talk about? Again, you can interrupt me and I can interrupt you, but we can't interrupt the others.
And only about Bachelor in Paradise.
That's true. That's true.
Let's go. ABC. Joe, Julia. Let's go right now before Rob shuts us down.
And welcome for the first time in the show, Josh Forbes. How are you?
Hey guys, good. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I've listened.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure I've listened to every episode.
He's not making this legit that I was standing in a park with my child, and he creepily ogled me.
Oh yeah,
came up to me and introduced himself as I didn't even know he was a filmmaker. He just said, "Oh, I'm a big fan of Killer POV," and then we were hanging out for probably about 20 minutes. Then he said he made some music videos, and then maybe another 20 minutes after that, our kids are playing, and then he goes, "Oh, he looked very sheepish as he said because he had heard certain reviews about a first film. He said, "Oh, and also I directed a film Contracted 2," and that was his introduction. I was like, "What?" And this is about 6 months ago, I think.
I Tell your friends.
I'm very confident about
But he did have a kid. He wasn't just hanging out in the park waiting for you, right?
I don't think it's his. But
Okay.
You can rent a child now. It's actually a great service.
He's also wearing one of the most badass shirts ever. It's this
thanks.
neon fly thing I love.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Am I close enough to the microphone? Here we go.
Yes.
You kind of got personal with the
There we
mic.
go.
So why are you here together? Explain your relation to this movie.
You're going to make them explain why they're here?
Well,
Yeah.
Why are you here? This is very metaphorical. I want a larger answer.
Well, now it's legal in every 50 states. So I think it's time for us to announce.
That's right.
So I directed Contracted, phase II, or Contracted 2, as I like to call it. And Morgan is one of the stars of the film. He's our bad guy.
That's right.
So Simon Barrett morphed into Morgan.
That's right.
Yeah.
As I said on Twitter the other day, I am
blurry Simon.
I am the Val Kilmer to Simon Barrett's Michael Keaton.
Exactly.
Which I really have to see, because if you know Morgan, he's just genuinely like the nicest guy ever, as he makes that wonderful smile. He's just a wonderful person. So
Although I did love, he did an appearance on the Mystic Party podcast.
Oh, God.
Bria Grant and
With
Zane
Bria
Grant.
and Zane, yeah.
And his problem on that show, what was your problem on that show?
That I have the face of a serial killer.
Yes, but it's very, very funny listen.
That's right. That's right. Because I'm a white male in my mid-30s, and I wear glasses, and I sometimes have facial hair. I can grow a mean mustache too. So when I have that, it's just all, everyone's like, "Don't go near a school."
you totally are a serial killer.
Thank you. Well, no, this part. I mean, what Bekah was talking about is one of the reasons that I took this role, and the other one is sitting next to my right here because Josh is pretty awesome.
Thanks.
But yeah, I play a lot of nice professional people. And
Did you guys know each other beforehand?
Nope.
No.
Oh, okay. So you casted him like just from the
Sight
books.
unseen.
Sight unseen.
No, I had. I think his name came up, and I looked at a bunch of his work and stuff, and yeah, I was.
And
like,
then
this
we
guy's
had
awesome.
we had a really great coffee, and
I heard him on this podcast and listened, and I was like,
He has
Really
some
loud.
amazing shorts, I've heard, that you
Yeah.
should definitely check out.
and I definitely, yeah.
When casting
I saw the
somebody to
barista.
play Barrett's role, was it kind of just comparing how hung they were? Hashtag VHS 2. Holy shit! Like, go Simon, go! Writing isn't all he does. Anyway, sorry for that. That's a diatribe.
Wow, basically.
Elric has apparently paused this a few times.
Hey, I noticed he had a Michael Fassbender kind of thing going on. I got
Yeah,
it.
that was Simon's thing. Is he's like, I want to show my dick, and it has to be in focus. And I was like, it's not going to happen.
No, but where did the idea I mean, I know you didn't necessarily write it, but you'll know where the genesis. Where did the idea come to kind of follow that character storyline? Because in the first one, he's so mysterious, only in it for a little bit,
Right.
But certainly piques your interest. I mean, it's a very strange opening. He's having sex with a corpse,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the first film, I feel like it's kind of a slow burn, and it kind of like culminates in something that's pretty cool and fun. And it's like, it has a lot of little Easter eggy type things, like who's this guy? And he has this tattoo that says Abaddon, like what is that? And that sort of thing. So I feel like for the sequel, I feel like it was kind of logical to be like, okay, well, let's explore these things,
And that was kind of one of the things when I was asked about playing the role, because it was like I'd seen the first movie, and then I thought there were some things about it that it did well, but also it's not a movie that immediately begged for a sequel, even though the ending is kind of open. It was sort of like it's a progression. You're not just going to set up another person and then watch them deteriorate and die again for 90 minutes.
And it's very kind of artistic. They're not more like indie and small. It doesn't scream franchise.
No,
Right,
not necessarily. Right. And so then so it was like, okay, and read the script, and the script was interesting, had some cool things, but it's like I wasn't sure. But really, it was, I'd played last year, I played an accountant, I played a guidance counselor, I played like a lawyer, I played a concierge, I played all these really nice roles, and they were great. And then, it's been a long time since I think Absentia was actually the last thing where I was allowed to show a significant amount of dark side. And when, your manager or your agent says, yeah, we can't get you in for that television show because all your stuff is comedy and Upright Citizens Brigade and everything like that. And it's like, oh, I can go dark. You want to see fucking dark? You want to see fucking dark? I can go dark. and so then this came along, and it was like, that like this really twisted guy. And then Josh and I sat down, and I think just our tastes and our instincts naturally just kind of, it was a great coffee, and I was like, yeah, I trust this guy.
Did you wear extensions to play Bagul? Because you don't look. So many fucking sequels, man.
I know.
I did watch them both this week. So.
Oh, and we have the same amount of print and advertising budget.
I'm sure. No. Couple mil.
I've seen your buses.
So I wanted to ask Josh, kind of, how did this opportunity present itself to you? And I guess, we kind of can't skate around this because Eric and Glenn directed the first movie, and he's a good guy. I actually like Eric a lot, and he's been pretty candid online when people ask him about it, saying, "Hey, the producers had the rights to do a sequel. I wrote something, but then another movie took off, and that was that." So,
yeah.
So when did you get kind of called in at that point? Did you know anybody involved, the producers or anything?
No, I think that maybe they saw. I did like a Vimeo staff pick short that was like about hipsters who like do their own like organic meth.
Artisanal meth.
I want this as a film. Wow. Organic meth, call him.
Yeah, and so like the actor from that I think had a meeting with these producers for something, and I think they saw that because it gets kind of gory and it's pretty silly. I've done like a million music videos, but that was it's just funny that like the thing that I did for $50 is something that like somebody was like, oh, this guy, can direct. But so I feel like it was from that. And I think originally they had reached out. Like I got a call that was like, "Do you want to do a sequel to Contract?" I'm like, "Yes, I love that movie." And then I'm like, I watched the movie that day, and then I pitched them some ideas, or no, because I was like, "Oh, cool, I want to read the script," and they're like, "Well, we don't have one yet. Can you write one in a month?" And I'm like, "Yes, I will do that." But then anyway, they found a different writer or something. So yeah, and then like it went away, and then it came back, and I read the script, and it was like crazy. It's just like a ton of gore, and I think I read like Zombie on page 3 or something, and I was like, yeah, let's make this. I'll make a movie.
Did you, because you were kind of coming in at a point where they were starting over with the script? Did you have influence with the screenwriter about kind of the stuff you wanted in there, or
not really? It was kind of like so set to go. It was like, it's pre-sold, IFC Midnight, like. We have our shoot date set. We have everything. Like you have 2.5 weeks to prepare. Wow. Let's go for it. And so there was a bunch of things that I like, changed and worked on or whatever. But the script is approved, and it's I keep likening it to getting hired onto a TV show, where it's like, okay, we have the characters, we have the script. You can have some influence on it. But, go and make the best thing.
But eventually the star is going to pull you aside like Rob Zombie and be like, "Hey, Rob, I understand what you're trying to do, but no one here gives a fuck." They just want to go home and take their check. I love that story of like, on CSI. But no, I think you brought like a real style to it. And I know music videos are a great place to hone style, but that was the one thing that instantly lit. Even in, to be honest, the first minute, which is kind of just ending where the last one ended,
right,
felt really exciting, and it reminded me a lot of Halloween too, how it just bam, the second the first movie ends, we're right into the next storyline, but it moves it's a totally different pace. This movie's like a breakneck pace, never slows down. It's not a slow movie at all. It's only like 80 minutes or
78 minutes.
Yeah. 78 minutes. So you're not even really a feature filmmaker.
But
we're 1 minute longer than Run Lola Run.
Which padded itself with animation sequence.
That's right.
Yeah, my joke is that the first movie is a slow burn, and that this movie burns when it pees.
I like that.
That's pretty good.
But the fast nature of everything coming together, I think Josh's somewhat, the improvisational nature is maybe a little too strong. But like there were things that, there was a lot of the script and we would shoot the script. But having seen the film now this last weekend, finally, some of my favorite moments are unscripted moments. There are moments that we found. There are moments that Josh found in the edit. There are moments that, and that I loved. And I was like, oh my God, where did that come from? And and so I think, yes, the prep of the movie was very fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you were able to really put your take on it and,
Yeah, that's what's fun for me is, because I do like a lot of sketch comedy stuff and just, that sort of thing and commercials and whatever. Like I'm used to, having a roadmap, but then like, okay, we got it. Let's play with it.
Right.
I feel like this movie has a lot more humor to it. We ended up cutting out a lot of jokes that I really love, but what can
on
you
the
do?
Blu-ray. That's right. Scenes, outtakes.
But yeah, it was a blast to make, and we just showed it at the Bruce Campbell Film Festival in Chicago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
and it had a really good showing there, and people loved it.
They responded really, really well. It was great.
I mean, it's definitely like a visceral, a lot of yelling and.
The weird thing, I was thinking about the first one when I was watching it, and the one thing about the first one that was like for a long while was really interesting and had me kind of going, and I didn't know whether what the story was, and it seems by the end it kind of doesn't stick. Is there's for a long time it feels like only she's seeing this about herself, but then at a certain point it's kind of forgotten, and then it just becomes a straight, oh yeah, she's becoming a zombie. But there's a good 25-minute section where it feels like every time she looks in the mirror and sees this crazy thing, no one else is really noticing. So I thought it was a movie about body image, you know what I mean?
Interesting, yeah.
But then at a certain point it just totally doesn't capitalize on that and becomes a straight film, and yours picks up from that point.
Right.
I was just wondering if you guys noticed that when you saw the first. I don't know. It was an odd
I think
tonal thing.
I mean, not to criticize the first movie, but I feel like there were moments in the first one where I feel like there's things that like work on the page, and then when you're on set, it's like, oh, that doesn't really make sense. Like like if somebody has like crazy like blood pouring out of their eye, and everyone's like, hey, are you feeling okay?
Are you on drugs?
Yeah, are you on drugs? Like, you would be like, no, we're going to the hospital now. Let's go. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So
it's a different movie though. If you would maintain that, right. Not you, but if the first one had maintained, it'd be kind of like Martin or something, where you'd have a character who thinks they're turning into a zombie, and everyone else going, "Are you okay?" Like you've got a mood, and I thought that was actually really interesting. I think it was when it switched, where I was like, "Oh, okay, I don't get it anymore." But
the same thing happened to a degree in Starry Eyes, where her body started to break down, and her roommate was just like, "You look a little off today."
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, they definitely had some overlap. They came out so similar, but yeah. Starry Eyes went all the way.
Yeah, that one definitely kept going with it.
A cult in there and everything.
Yeah, there was a lot.
So what were some of the music videos that you had done? Like, you're nominated for VMA right now.
He's a VMA award nominated. Well, VMA award is redundant, but
you were actually, let's really talk about this.
Yeah.
You're a viral sensation now.
Yeah, I've been internet famous
because
for 1 week,
you're poor.
guys. Yeah. My poverty is viral. I directed. I mean, I've done. So what are the videos that I've done that people know about? The Fray, You Found Me, or Sarah Bareilles' Love Song. I just did a video for The Offspring.
That one's amazing. I think I showed that. I showed that to you guys, didn't I? It's the horror one. It's clowns killing each other the entire movie.
Where does that play though now? Because like I remember moving back to America and then turning on MTV and go, where the fuck did all the music go? Like seriously, like I don't understand where everything's gone. And music videos are still being made high end, but where is it? Just the internet?
It's YouTube. I mean, that's what's weird is like more people watch music videos now than ever before.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's just on YouTube or whatever. So so there's a video that I did for this band Walk the Moon, and the song's called Shut Up and Dance. And I was nominated for Best.
I know that song plays on the radio every
nonstop.
5 minutes.
Yeah, it's like the most popular.
Like I was in Rocket Fizz buying soda today, and it was playing.
It's a great song, and it's been like smash hit of the summer.
Yeah, so it was like nominated for Best Rock Video, and so the thing was, I was like, oh, cool, this is awesome. I want to go to the VMAs. Like that'll be cool. And I'm like, how do I go? Like, where are my tickets? And they're like, well, it's. At minimum, it's $400 a piece for a ticket.
Wait, you're nominated, but you still have to buy a ticket?
Yeah.
That's kind of crap.
Yeah. Super crap. So that's why even for like the nosebleed seats, like the orchestra seats are $850 a piece.
But you make $1 every time someone watches it on YouTube.
Oh, wait. No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Isn't
that how the internet works?
Yeah. So long story short, like I made a GoFundMe page or whatever, and a lot of people were, like suggested that, like, hey, why don't you just crowdfund it or whatever? So I kind of did it.
Are you being serious about hey, if nobody like donated to it, would you be like, well, it's just kind of goofing around or whatever? I mean, it's exceeded its goal.
Right. Well, I think it was just I think I'm used to not getting my hopes up. So that was the sort of thing where it's like, all right, well, let's see what happens. And that kind of got picked up. Like the Daily Beast wrote an article, and then the AV Club, and I don't know.
Well, I think because like Elric said, it's like I don't even know. Like again, MTV doesn't show videos anymore, so it's like, what's the modern context of videos? And I guess you're right, because sometimes I fall down that YouTube rabbit hole where I'll start watching something. I was like, oh, let me see this other. Oh, there's a video to this song. All right, cool.
I do it all the time, and especially like when I'm working, I use YouTube as my radio station where I'm just like, what do I want to listen to today? I'll start with this, and then it's just on in the background. It's not even the main screen that's up. I'm typing on Word and things like that.
Subdivisions of YouTube, like YouTube Music and YouTube.
Well, no, but like every artist has like their own
page,
YouTube, and there are like curators. I'm forgetting one of the big ones that does like I feel like you'll see their logo in the bottom corner of every like big
Vimeo
video
or something like that.
something like
that.
They put them out, and you're 85 million hits on Walk the Road.
I mean, if you look on YouTube at like the most watched things, it's like all music videos.
Wow.
Well, my point being is so now we're trying to get used to the idea of how music videos are seen, but I think the thing that people are responding to with your case, which I did too, is just the simplicity of, all right, you're nominated for your work, but you're not welcome to the party.
Nope.
And it's like, that doesn't seem fair. Like,
that's
if you're
insane,
a director of a
honestly.
movie that's nominated for an Oscar, I'm pretty sure you can get into the Oscars, right? Or do you have to pay for that too?
No, Rihanna needs 60 people.
Oh, that's why. I see.
I don't know that for sure.
She get in free? I mean, that's confusing to me because, I mean, how many people for the VMAs are nominated across the board? I would say less than 30.
Right. I mean, all the artists get to go for free, and if we won, they would get to go up on stage. Like, I wouldn't get to go on stage.
Are you fucking serious? That is so. Oh my god.
Wow. But they might thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
They're like, thanks for directing our video.
So it's I feel like it's kind of a vestige of like maybe back in the day, like in the 90s or something, where it's like, okay, we'll just charge this much for a ticket, and anonymous content is doing well, or RSA, or like there's enough money just like spilling out of everybody's asshole or whatever.
We need people for the red carpet
or something. I don't know. Or it's weird. It's weird too because there's like a website called One Iota, which is like you can go as a seat filler. So like I have to pay for my ticket, but some guy, could just sign up and like do it for free. I don't know, or or potentially get paid for it. I don't know how seat filling.
You should
works.
Totally go as a seat filler.
Yeah.
Did you get feedback from the people you're making look cheap?
Right. No, not yet. It's been weird.
Wow, that's interesting. They didn't.
Yeah, because I've even kind of like prodded them, like, hey, guy,
Yeah.
Well, and to Josh's credit, I mean, people have wanted to like take up your cause in like kind of this fuck MTV type of way. But I mean, Josh's point of view, and it's on your GoFundMe video, is never one of like, it's like, hey, this would be nice. Let's hey, want to help me get there? And it's not really an angry, bitter,
right?
But it could be a nudge, like, hey, just so you guys realize you don't pay for the people you've nominated. Maybe they don't. It's like one of those things they don't even think about, and
raising the awareness of like, hey, let's actually, the content creators are important.
That would never happen in the world of horror,
right? Well, it's funny too, like like this whole idea of the guy, the fat Jew or the fat Jewish or whatever.
Oh yeah, the guy. Yeah.
Like he's getting harangued for making money off of other people's content. But I mean, that's kind of what MTV does, without crediting them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even YouTube or any of that stuff. So I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, so I'm going to go. I got way more money.
It's Sunday.
It's this Sunday.
It's this Sunday?
That's awesome.
And then I got a suit donated to me by the Combatant Gentleman. You guys should go to that website.
Wow. I like that your whole event is like sponsored. So do you get to actually like walk the carpet, like get to see whatever crazy outfit like Beyonce wears or anything?
I'm going to push for that next. Yeah.
So, but I think you should.
I mean, this is the kind of thing where
I'd have to buy my award.
Are you serious?
Oh my God, I hadn't heard that.
Oh my God.
Wow. Pay your rent? Really? It's for real?
I think it's like $500 for a Moon Man or something. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I'm just going to say what no one else would say. Fuck MTV.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's ludicrous.
I mean,
It's kind of brutal.
These are very much like first world problems, but
right.
There's first world problems are still problems.
They are still problems.
Yeah, I mean, they should be exposed and addressed.
But where's honestly, I would expect more appreciation from MTV than this. Like respecting, because they're celebrating the artist, they should respect the artist who is giving them content.
Like at maximum, like 20 directors or something, and the place can seat like 7,000.
But what I was going to say is if you win, it is pretty cool because even if you're not up there on stage, word gets out and you get to direct bigger and bigger things. So that's pretty rad. Yeah. So congrats on that. Now,
so when do you start your Lady Gaga video?
American Horror Story. That could lead to the next year's American Horror Story.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it is funny though. Speaking of horror, like I got reached out to by I got a management company, and he was like, "Oh, I love this video. Are you represented anywhere?" And I'm like, "I'm not." And he's like, we started talking back and forth. And I was like, I just did this movie, Contracted 2, da-da-da-da. And he's like, "Oh, is that a horror movie?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh." And then it just kind of...
Oh, my God.
Man, come on.
Weird.
That's not weird.
I always think it's going to go the opposite way these days, but I guess not.
Right.
Because there's so much money in music videos to be made by representation. That is
and
weird.
horror.
Oh, wow. Well, it leads into my next question because, you said you're a listener of our show, which means you're a genre fan. So,
yeah, definitely.
What's kind of some of how do you kind of get into the genre? What are your earliest memories of kind of movies that you fell in love with?
Right. One of the earliest ones, my uncle worked at like a video equipment rental place. So he used to have like a big projector, and he'd also have like multiple VCRs. So we would just record everything. And I remember like one of my earliest memories was watching Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, like on a wall.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's what I mean. And that just like blew my mind. And I was just by myself. I think it was like the family was having a party, and I was just like mesmerized. Where I'm like, this is so funny, and it's scary, and it's stupid. Like, you obviously know that like things are in reverse and stuff.
Do you have any idea? I was just thinking about the movie because I remember seeing it real young. I have no idea who made that movie. Like, it's one of those movies that just feels like it exists and no humans made it. Like, it just appeared.
Right,
Do you know anything about it?
I remember so many lines from it, though. Like, I watched it so many times, and the first time I saw it was actually in the movie Morgan Stewart's Coming Home.
That's how I first saw it.
Where they actually, they
funny.
go to the theater to see it, and I remember the line that's in that one: "This gentleman is a cherry tomato," and then like you see the giant one chasing the woman in the shopping
and
cart.
I was like, that can't be a real movie,
Yeah.
right? That's
And
my
then
initial thought.
I remember I was so enamored with it because of Morgan Stewart's Coming Home. My mom bought it for me. Like, we had like a VHS clamshell of Killer Tomatoes because I was so enamored with it from that. Yeah, I know nothing about who made it.
I
looking
remember
it up.
the great George Clooney in Return.
Return rocks.
That one I love.
Yeah,
That
it's
one's
hilarious.
Funny
It's
movie.
so self-aware. I love the sponsorship gags where they start running out of money midway through shooting. And I love, there's just this one scene where he's trying to write down a code or something, and George Clooney just goes, "Oh, here, have a piece of my script. I'm not using it." And it's just amazing. It's just so self-aware.
I really want those people on now because I don't know who they are.
I'm looking it up.
Where is it set? New York or LA?
Oh, God, it's been so long.
Yeah.
Was
That
that,
they're the
is that
only two
Clooney's
options.
best genre performance? I mean, because what
Grizzly.
else? He had like his
Return to Horror
Grizzly
High.
2.
He did have
Return to
Grizzly
Horror
2.
High.
But no, Return
From Dusk Till Dawn.
From Dusk Till Dawn is the best thing.
Yeah.
He might
It
be a
really
bastard,
is.
but
He's
he's not
so-
a fucking bastard.
Yep.
Great
So
line.
goddamn good in that movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
He is.
Another big one for me too that I remember was Psycho 2, or like when I was a kid.
my language.
Yeah, like we just met Todd Holland too at
The nicest man.
Yes.
at the Bruce Campbell thing. But so my dad was a couple things. One, my dad was a homicide detective. We can talk about that in a second.
interesting.
But I just remember there was like a day where like we had a snow day. I grew up in Denver. And like we went and got all these movies, and we got like all the Psycho movies. And I just remember like at the end of Psycho 2, when he hits that woman with a shovel. That's Psycho 2, right?
Yes.
Because you're like the expert.
Oh, yeah. Great ending.
That I laughed so hard as I kept rewinding and watching it over and over. It would just
Pretty funny.
it just killed me. And I knew it wasn't supposed to. I mean, I think it's funny, but it's not supposed to be funny.
Right.
But that was one that just really, really blew me away. And
Oh
then,
man, I thought you were going to tie it into something like with your dad being like, "I once saw that on a case."
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, the other
You shouldn't
one,
laugh at shovel killing the son.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. Like, growing up, like I would like go to the police station all the time and hang out, and like he would have just these binders of like crime scene photos. So that was like what we did for fun. Is he would just like that was like my bedtime stories. Like he would like flip through and like, oh, here, this guy drove a bus through a mall and he got shot in the head. Like it was crazy. But
Wow.
that
Your childhood just got dark.
Yeah, so I definitely know that somehow.
Did he
like, messed me up.
contextualize it, or did he just kind of like, was that his like lightness to the day?
No,
showing you.
He would just. I mean, it's like like if you make donuts and you're like, here's the glaze. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's what I mean.
Crime
Like,
photos to donuts. I get it. Sure.
yeah, like that was just his. Like that was just his thing. Like this guy is wearing it's like a medallion, like the what is it, St. Michael or something like that. This guy had a St. Michael thing, and somebody like stabbed him in the chest, but that like thing sort of, it didn't stop the knife, it just went into his body. It was like disgusting stuff.
Wow.
You know, that I just remember like, or like I remember, like there was a van that they found a dead guy in that was just covered in maggots.
Oh, man.
Okay.
He got suspirited.
I get it, because I used to get those stories, too, because my mom worked in a funeral home for years, and so she would come home, and I'd hear work stories where, like, they brought in a body bag today, and the bag was moving from all the bugs inside and things like that. And so I'd get all these stories about crazy autopsies, or we found this man, and we couldn't close the bag because he had a broom through his head and things like that. Okay, I get it.
There's a lot of that in Contracted, too. I mean, we got maggots, we got people having sex on, in funerals.
Brooms through head.
We'll get to the brooms through that. We'll get there.
So it is kind of funny, with this movie where, just being a genre fan and just being like obsessed with gross stuff and just extreme cinema, like I have a hard time knowing if things are too far in the movie, like especially after seeing it so many times. Like I showed it to my brother, my little brother, and he was like, "Bro, I think you filmed hell."
How old's your little brother?
He's like 35, but to me,
I totally want that on the cover though. Bro, we filmed hell.
I want it to be played by Shaggy.
Hey, bro. I think you filmed hell.
So, I mean, have you always wanted to try to get into genre filmmaking? How did the music video thing happen? I mean, was that, like, how did your directing career start?
Yeah, it's funny because, like, I feel like the first film I made was like in college. Like, I went to a Christian college, and the first a school assignment was me murdering people with a spatula.
Wow.
And that was cool there?
I guess so. It was like, I assume the teacher, like, it was like the most entertaining one in the class. And the teacher was like, who shot this? Like, he didn't really know how to critique it because it was like, it was entertaining. I mean, it was like ridiculous, but I don't know. I mean, I've always loved horror movies. I've always loved that sort of thing. Like in comedy, like those are the two things I love the most. And so music videos is always just kind of a stepping stone to that, as far as like all my heroes like Spike Jonze and Michel Gondry and Mark Romanek and David Fincher and stuff like that.
I think sequels are a great way to obviously break in. You get a chance. In a way, it's like almost having a little safety net. It's like there's a little blueprint, like you said, and then you can go. But it's also the negative is that we don't get to see what, not stylistically, but what thematically you might have been really into. Because I'm watching you through someone else's filter. So if this was your first film from your dream project, what would it be? What kind of movie? What kind of horror film? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I have something right now that I'm working on with a writer that's like. It's kind of like Barton Fink meets Evil Dead 2. Like,
wow.
About a guy who has a neighbor who like drives him crazy, and he kills the neighbor, and then the neighbor comes back as like a head who's talking to him and stuff.
Oh, cool.
But the neighbor would be like made out of prosthetics, like a giant fat monster guy or whatever.
Oh, fun. So it's a lot more playful. And
so I think
weird.
because you're always talking about Coscarelli and like fantasy and stuff like that, and that's really my wheelhouse,
Stalker.
Yeah, sorry.
Quoting us from previous episodes.
That's a fan.
I know, I'm just kidding.
But that's my thing. It's like, I've done like, I just did these commercials for Comedy Central and Jack Link's Jerky, and like we had a Sasquatch. It was like one of those.
They're good.
Oh my God, that's you. Those are hilarious.
So like, I think any time I can have somebody in like a crazy monster outfit, I'm really, really happy.
They've been playing those during Key and Peele.
Oh, cool.
Would you want to do like a creature feature? Like
sure.
Just get a bunch of monsters together?
Absolutely.
We don't have any money to give you. You were sounding way too energetic.
I've heard good things about you and Kickstarters.
Well, that's, and again, like with that, the music video I did for The Offspring, like my pitch was, I'm like, it's Clown Fight Club. And so it's basically clowns fighting each other, and like it gets more and more violent. And like we finished it, and the singer, Dexter, was like, this is great, but I could show it to my 6-year-old daughter. If I gave you more money, could you make it more violent? I was like, oh my God. I have it.
Could I?
Now, do you have problems with MTV with that? Because when I've done music videos in past, there's always like blood restrictions, like the blood can't be too red and things like that. Or this is like 8 years ago.
This was just like, who cares,
I guess it's The Offspring. They'll do it, and if they don't
or
care,
do you have to deliver different edits depending on the networks? We just kind of
did the one. I think it was just kind of more for YouTube or something.
That's awesome, because I know like we had to do different edits depending on whether we were on MTV, MTV2, or just the general
Oh, sure.
radio music company's
it seems
site.
like that's irrelevant now.
Yeah, completely.
And plus, that was like in '86, Bekah. You're so
Yeah, I know. I'm so. This is like no. It honestly
totally
was
dating yourself.
like 6 years ago. So yeah.
But that's the thing, like, because I love that sort of stuff, and I don't get to do it very often. I mean, I did a video for Steve Aoki that was basically Steve Aoki getting his ass kicked by this girl, and it's just this big, it's basically like an excuse to do this big fight scene,
You showed me that. It was awesome.
Yeah. So as much as I can get away with that stuff, I will. But, 90% of the stuff I get sent is like somebody won The Voice and, has $100,000 and wants to look good. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that.
Do you keep up with, I'm sure you do, but do you keep up with all the modern horror films that we're doing? I'm always curious what other young directors are digging by the guys around them. Like, you listen to the show, are you catching up with what Wingard and Ty and people like that are doing? And
oh, for sure. Yeah. I love The Guest and I love It Follows. And I shot second unit on a movie called Some Kind of Hate.
Oh my God. I loved that.
I'm very excited about that.
Sorry. I just saw it a couple of days ago, and there were definitely some flaws in it, but I really love Grace Phipps in it. She's amazing.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Who directed that? Somebody who named
Adam Egypt Mortimer.
Yeah, okay.
The best name ever.
That's a
Middle
bold
name Egypt.
Yeah. So that I like that one a lot.
How'd you end up doing a second unit for someone? How's that?
We're just friends. Yeah. I mean, we kind of met in the music video world, and it's one of those things where I'll get people saying like, oh, you should meet this guy. He's into horror, and I'm always like, no. Like he's gonna be a weirdo.
Right.
But
I've had similar.
But actually, what happens is every time that happens, it's always somebody awesome. And so it was Adam, and like we kind of buddied up, and like he was doing this movie, and he's like, I don't really have any money, but we need somebody to shoot more stuff. So you saw I did the cop scene when he dies.
Oh wow, that movie looked really hot.
Yeah,
and unpleasant
it was hot,
and sweaty.
It was very warm.
All those things.
Sounds hot.
All those things.
So yeah, what other things am I digging? I don't know, same stuff like Babadook and all that stuff.
Uh-huh. Was there anything that like any of these particular that got you like, oh, that's what I would be doing too, or you still haven't seen that movie? Sounds like you're doing something like because you're talking about the fantastic. There aren't a lot of these directors dealing with that, probably because of budgets, partly.
Yeah, it's hard to do that stuff at some of the budgets we're working with.
Yeah,
right. I mean, that's what's funny about when I saw It Follows. Like, I enjoyed it a lot, but it kind of bummed me out because I was like, oh, that's a cool movie. Like, I don't want to do it. I'm not good at cool movies.
Yeah, and plus that budget was like way higher than I hear anybody getting here. So.
Yeah. And then I don't know. I mean, there's stuff like Kung Fury and like Dude Bro Party Massacre 3. Like,
I love that title. I haven't seen it yet, but Dude Bro Party Massacre 3. It's like, who doesn't want to see that?
We hung out with those guys in Chicago.
Yeah,
they're awesome.
Is it a good film?
I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either.
But I feel like that those are. I mean, I'm sure it's really good, but I feel like those kind of are probably difficult to sustain your attention. Like I'm so ADD. I think it would be like my favorite movie, but I haven't been able to sit and watch all of Kung Fury, and it's like a half hour. So I think it's like draining on you. So yeah, what would be a movie? I don't know. I've been watching like a lot of like Asian movies. Like the other night I just watched God of Cookery by Stephen Chow, who did.
Awesome.
It's so fun. It's not really a horror movie, but it's like that's what I want to be doing. Or Journey to the West. Have you seen that? Guys, Journey to the West.
Is this
Rob is our resident expert in this.
So there's definitely
not, but I haven't seen
defer to
this.
Rob.
Yeah, Rob's missed these.
It's so good. It's so Stephen Chow who did Kung Fu Hustle,
which I love. Oh my gosh, that's
forever.
wonderful.
There's a lot of like fighting demons and stuff like that. It's just the first 15 minutes is better than anything I've ever seen in my life. I think it's like fighting this giant demon fish or whatever. It's
my gosh,
so cool.
Sounds cool.
You said the magic word.
Yeah,
demon fish.
Aquatic horror.
It's called Journey to the West.
Yeah. What else have I been watching? It's a lot of TV.
You saw Tales from Halloween too, right?
Yeah, Tales from Halloween was really fun.
And you guys finally did you watch it too?
I was only in Chicago, unfortunately, for like a whirlwind 18 hours, but Josh got there a few days before
So
me and
you
was
got
able
to
to see
see
some stuff.
Our lovely mugs in that film.
Yeah.
Everybody's
I'm
in it.
hidden somewhere
Or
in there.
multiple cameos.
Yeah.
My voice is in it
My
somewhere
daughter's
as well.
in it.
Yeah.
Did you have a
it's
favorite
just
of the
a big party.
storylines? I'm very curious because I have a feeling every human will have a different answer to this, so it's going to be
Right.
fun. Were there any that particularly blew you away of the stories?
I liked Mike Mendez a lot. I mean, I liked them all. I think Neil's is really fun. Like it's about a killer pumpkin.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Which it's funny because I feel like every single one of those movies could make a movie that would maybe wear on you or something. Or it would take a lot of extra juice to fill out. And so it's kind of fun that they're all just like, here's a sweet concept, boom, deliver, we're done. But the killer pumpkin one, that's when I'm like, oh, can I make that movie?
Yeah, that's a good fit.
Wow.
And I hear you're the world's expert on plague movies. Self-proclaimed on the internet. Is this true?
Sure. Yeah.
That's what you're going to contract. Well, that is our topic.
That's our topic.
So we're going to segue to our topic, and I expect you to be brainy.
We're doing
plagues.
Plagues and virus films.
Okay, so not sex anymore.
Well, what happened is at one point you said sex in an email, and then somebody said, well, actually, there's no sex in the movie. I think it was Morgan. So it changed. But then I think yesterday I saw an email chain that said sex again.
And I texted him today and was like, let's have sex and pizza. And then Elric was like, no plagues. And I was like, well, plagues and pizza doesn't sound as fun, but we can do that.
So if you've been prepping, get ready for a restart. Because I think it would be false advertising.
Yeah, because I was making my list of first boners and all that stuff. So.
Well, you can tell us those two.
So you can relate that to plagues now.
Sure. It's a plague.
Your first plague boner.
Yeah. Plague boners. But
it was in a documentary about the Black Plague, actually.
Did you look at anything directly for the making of the movie? Were there any of those kind of movies that you went back and looked at? Okay, what does Ebola do or anything like that? Or did you just watch the end of Eric's film and copy it frame for frame?
Yeah, I was like,
Plagiate.
Plagiate?
Yeah, from the Reanimator musical. Plagiate.
You can't improve on perfection. So I just watched the first one over and over.
You went over through for that?
Yeah, like how Orson Welles watched Stagecoach. When he made Citizen Kane.
400 times.
Yeah, I don't know what I watched. I mean, maybe The Fly again or something like that.
Yeah, the puking scene. That's about as gross as it gets in terms of a puking scene. I can't think there's anything grosser than The Fly. When he pukes on the guy's arm at the end. That's
Stand By Me at the pie eating contest.
Well, there was
Rules of Attraction at the start. The guy's having sex with the girl from behind and he pukes on her. And you're just like, oh, that's just one of the worst things I've ever seen.
I saw that movie once. I saw Rules of Attraction once, and I think I was on a major Bret Easton Ellis kick. And then you can just kind of max out on him. And I can't do anymore.
Yeah.
There's a French thriller called Nowhere to Hide, I think, that I watched.
Yeah, I think I've seen that a long time.
That was one of those where I was like, okay, I know that they shot, because we have some hospital scenes, so I was like, how did they shoot that in a way that looked cool?
Soderbergh's Contagion was one of the most upsetting movies I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years. Even the trailer will make you start washing your hands and not stop until you're bleeding.
No, there's this one scene in that where this woman from, I think she's from the CDC, is yelling at her assistant, and she goes, just stop touching your face. And then you realize that he's been it's not even he's doing it that much, but he's just casually brushing his hair off his face and everything for the past 5 minutes. And she's freaking out on him about it. And then you're like, man, I touch my face a lot.
I will say that I think I just saw that I was sitting next to my wife, Crystal, when we saw the trailer, and there is a moment in the trailer when someone touches that moving thing on the side of the escalator.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
And she's always like, never touch that thing. Never. You know how many hands have been on that thing.
I
Don't
would
touch
so
it.
fall
and sure
over.
enough, that's in the trailer as one of the moments of, possible contamination.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, see?
That's a very downbeat movie. I remember I saw that at the
yeah.
DGA, and Soderbergh stand up afterwards, and so you're already depressed, and then he goes, oh, and just so you know, this is my last movie I'll ever make. I'm retired. And then he kind of sat there, and you're all just sitting this is the biggest bummer of a night. And I don't really like that. I actually didn't like Contagion. I think Contagion is really effectively made. It's a good movie. Yeah. But there's something in the tone that I want a little pulse. When I watch 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, there's a pulse, man. They're let's have some. 28 Weeks Later is just fucking balls out.
It's just, they're
just
both
moves,
so great.
know?
Actually, and that's not bad. Not to toot our own horn too much, but that's not a bad comparison.
Yeah, sure.
There's more 28 weeks in terms of pacing. I saw that in your film.
I mean, obviously 28 Days Later is not quite the slow burn that the first Contracted is, but it's it's very much, to ourselves, we were sort of it's a little bit of the aliens, right. Where it's yes, it's a sequel, but boy, the tone and the pace is very, very different.
Right.
Or as Josh said in Chicago, this is our Howling 3, the Marsupials.
Yeah, right. I don't know if that's quite accurate.
That joke never had a better chance than in this room.
Hats off to you, Philippe. But I guess let's just name some of the obvious ones. Obviously, you said 28 Days and Weeks Later.
Yeah.
Which you know what? The one time I only saw 28 Weeks Later once, and I think it might have been a Fango.
We held nationwide screenings. We did screenings in 3 cities.
It was a double feature with the original at the Two Boots in New York. And what a way.
Good pizza.
Seeing those two back to back, on the big screen together, that was a really weird experience.
But it's great when sequels are different and when they build upon each other, like for real.
Yeah.
Like that's that great double feature, I would think.
And it's a great cast too. It's Rose Byrne and Jeremy Renner and Robert Carlyle.
Robert Carlyle is great. The opening.
That's a big one.
Rec 1 and 2 comparatively in terms of
isn't that a
1,
zombie?
2.
Well, I guess it's more
Pure
supernatural.
outbreak. I mean, it's still purely a virus movie.
It's a quarantine. I mean, the American remake was called Quarantine.
Yeah, but
first one for sure, and then they tweak their mythology to get out of it. But still, the first movie is totally a virus movie.
And you can have supernatural viruses. I mean, that's also part of there's different subgenres of the virus film. But it is interesting when it's. I mean, I guess the classic you think is Outbreak for my age, because I remember seeing it in theaters and I had all these A-list actors and a monkey, and everyone knows how AIDS started, with the monkey and was it a blue monkey? What was the story? The original folk tale about AIDS.
I don't know. Don't pull me in.
See, I thought that.
I remember this terrible.
Was more of. I thought the Outbreak thing was more of based off Ebola, and it was bats.
Yeah, it is. It's about Ebola. Yeah. No, but I'm just wondering how these kind of myths start about things. Where the hell did the guy having sex with a green monkey come from?
Like a green monkey,
or something like that.
This is very precise.
New Zealand has very strange mythologies.
I guess I'm the only one who's heard this.
But were you guys all forced to read? I remember my senior year of high school, we had to read Hot Zone.
No,
that movie, that book messed me up.
I want to say it was high school biology. And for me, it was right around the time that Outbreak came out too. So it was
exactly the same time, because I remember that we watched Outbreak in class right after reading Hot Zone.
Yeah,
and it was
What's
like
Hot
a new
Zone?
movie.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's the book based on the discovery of the Ebola virus and containing it, and then bringing it to America and containing it in the labs and everything. And it goes through the progression of the disease, what happens to the people who get it, the first few outbreaks where they didn't know what they had and they were trying to contain it, but they had no idea how it was spreading. Things like that is really gruesome and really just brutal, and makes you think about how often you're washing your hands or touching people. And so it's thick. I remember looking at it in high school and being like, this is going to be the largest book I've ever read, but it's a quick read and it's really fascinating.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so tricky about making a movie like this, where you kind of quickly want it to blow out, and you want it to have that scope, but it's we didn't really have a ton of money. So it's how do you, so that's part of the trick of it, was okay, this is the movie that takes place right before the actual outbreak happens.
Yeah.
So it was sort of the thought process.
So whoever has to do the third, did they think, were they thinking franchisee when they're doing, so they're thinking down the road 3 and 4.
Yeah. There's very much kind of an Avengers-esque post-credit
there's a post-credit stinger.
Yeah.
Yes, with someone
with someone that we know.
Yeah.
Because part of it too is it's for me, I'm we've got to have people in biohazard suits, and we need a quarantine zone, and then I'm we can't afford that. What if this is before they know they should be wearing expensive things?
For some reason, I never liked those movies as much. I always liked the self-contained. I think Shivers and Rabid, I feel are as good as anything you could ever do, and that's one-on-one and small, or one person spreading a sexual disease in a hotel, or a Comet Living Place. Yeah,
isn't that always cool though? I think World War Z nailed this home for me more so than anything recently, where it was World War Z is a very well made. Beautiful movie in spots, but the first 20 minutes of that movie did almost nothing for me, because when you get that big in scope and you're and there's so many things and there's a pile of people coming over the wall, I look at it and I don't quite have a reference point for it in my mind. So I'm not really scared. But then the scariest moment is Brad Pitt's in the stairwell and the zombie is in his face, and there's potential of the blood or the saliva getting in his eye or getting in his mouth. And so finally, when you've just come out of this amazing, huge, I'm sure incredibly expensive sequence, when it leaves all that behind and just gets super duper small, that's finally when they had me. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
All this stuff before, I don't know what to do with it.
Part of it's looking at a lot of CGI too.
Yeah,
sure. That's all. But it's also, and that's the problem, I think, with one of the problems with massive comic book movies is the larger in scope you get, the less danger your audience is prone to feel.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't feel anything. I love Avengers, and I'm glad they keep
great
making
movies.
These movies. But the second one, I felt like nothing at all.
I saw it 2 days ago, and
pure spectacle.
I was totally shocked how nothing from it. Like I really liked the first. I thought it was funny. I didn't see Joss's voice in there at all.
No,
there wasn't like even a joke. And Iron Man has just become flattened out.
Yes.
He's not funny or charming. He's just this guy.
They do need to get Iron Man to a pretty dark place for Civil War, but that's a whole other thing.
But anyway, it was still well made, but it just I agree with it. I didn't feel anything.
But getting back to World War Z, but that's also why for me I really appreciated, and I'm glad they changed the ending, but the third act works the best to me.
I was going to say, and so many people were complaining about it, and that was the thing that the original third act had been ginormous and been shot in Russia, and it was like, no, we just instead went back and reshot the entire third act, and it works.
Yeah,
you're right.
Great.
That's the part that works.
Him walking by himself through the easily the best
pretty
part.
much.
It's great stuff.
Yeah, I Am Legend is really one of the few movies that's been able to pull off broad scope, at least for me, and like keeping it small and personal because of one guy.
Yeah.
And a dog.
Not as good as the Amiga Man, though, which is one of my favorites. I love
Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I Am Legend still had those because I was actually there when they shot that bridge scene.
Yeah.
And they the big rumor on set was that like every minute was costing like $500,000 per minute. And because
that's
there was
just Will Smith's catering though.
And there were so many of us on the bridge that night, and they would reset. And so it was seriously like we would hear this giant megaphone that would say, okay, everyone, and action. And everyone would take one step forward, cut, reset, and everyone would take one step back. And then we would stand there for another hour. And it was just insane. Oh, wow. So there was still like that big spend scope on that movie, even though it felt smaller.
Yeah.
Well, we have to mention the Crazies, obviously George Romero's and the remake.
Of course.
I've
never seen. Yeah. Is the original worth seeing? I've actually never seen it.
It's very similar to the remake.
It's pretty. I think they're pretty different. I mean, it's been years since I've seen either of them, but I remember. I like the original Romero movie. I think it might be a little too long. I remember it being really long. And I mean, there's things about it that are great. Like, Lynn Lowry's, like, it's her introduction, and she's just got such a unique look to her and stuff like that. And then her dad in the movie is the guy, the doctor from Day of the Dead. But that was actually one of the few remakes that I actually really liked a lot, if not maybe a little bit better.
Good cast. Timothy Olyphant was good.
And Rhoda Mitchell and some really like some of the set pieces they had in that like were immediate. We're talking about like danger and like real palpable danger. The guy just walking through the Little League. I mean, that was the trailer, but it was the guy walking through the Little League outfield just like with that dead look on his face holding a shotgun, I think, or something. And it was like, whoa, that's creepy.
Yeah, there's some good stuff. One of the early weird ones is I Drink Your Blood from 1970.
Yeah.
I've still never seen it.
That's like, it's rabies, isn't it?
It's
hippies with rabies.
They drink the blood and then they develop something.
It's in pies, isn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't they put it in something?
It's meat pies.
Meat pies that are injected with something.
Yeah.
If it's blood or something like that, and then people get infected. That's a weird movie, and of course Grindhouse Releasing put it out.
Right.
So it's in that vein.
Yeah.
Well, and there's two. I know one I know you love because you've got two films that are based on signals that are plagues, which is The Signal and Pontypool. Both those films together have a very interesting, different kind of play on it, which is cool. It's
I'm surprised Elric hasn't brought off this stuff yet.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
I've got it written down with big apostrophe.
Sorry.
One thing I was thinking about was where these stories come from for us, like where is it rooted in, like the idea that these are our extinction tales, just like we like apocalypse movies. And I was thinking back to Bergman's Seventh Seal and thinking, okay, so it probably just clearly just goes back to the fact that the Black Plague really did wipe out, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of people. So I guess there are these cycles, and we've had obviously the battle with AIDS and cancer, and there's been certain diseases that have wiped out huge portions, but never to that extent, obviously because of science. But it would make sense that in the future something would come that we wouldn't have a cure for, or wouldn't understand quick enough. And that's an amazing film if you've never seen it. I know horror fans might go tread lightly on Bergman, but playing chess with death so you get a little more time in life is pretty interesting.
It's man versus nature on one of the most extreme scales I think you can get, because it's it's Jeff Goldblum. It's life finds a way, or nature finds a way to not have man get too overpowering of the earth. And we've gotten really good at curing ourselves now. So, but in the Dark Ages, we weren't so good, and something came up, sure enough, to cull the herd.
The scary part, it seems like if there was another major thing that was going to wipe us out, it seems like it would come from our own, the fact that we've been creating all these cures. What's the antibiotics?
We're going to make something
we created
that's
so many
resistant.
antibiotics, and our kids get so many shots that eventually something would join and create something that we're not ready for, that we've kind of made.
Well, that's why they keep talking about the super bugs, which are like these like MRSA and ones like that, these diseases that we can no longer cure because it completely is like, fuck you, antibiotics. I don't care.
Yeah.
One thing I keep thinking of, it's not a movie, but I don't know if you guys play board games. There's a board game called Pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I've never played it. I've heard great things about it, though.
It's like a collaborative game where you're kind of playing against, these like sort of randomly generated plagues or whatever, like viruses that are happening, and you can really feel that sort of exponential interconnectivity of the world, like where it's just you roll a dice and it's just like, oh shit, like this outbreaks to here, and it's very quickly can get out of hand. It's terrifying.
I'm terrified when I remember whenever there's these outbreaks and somebody will walk by you wearing a little white mask and it scares the shit out of me because I'm like, oh fuck, what do you know that I don't know?
I see people in Los Angeles wearing this. Like if you go to the Grove, there's always at least one person in a mask, and I'm like, what bike. The hell? Is it just that you don't want to inhale the smog that we're all used to, or do you like seriously have something weird?
Well, I was just in Japan, and I guess basically like you wear a mask if you're sick as a way to be polite to other people.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. But even though I know that, every time I look, I'm just like, oh shit, like what's going on?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, kind of hard not to.
Because it looks terrifying.
Some of the other ones that I have down, Splinter, I always thought was like a really cool one. This one, Rob, if you haven't seen this, you need to. It's 2004. I think it's Japanese. Infection.
Yeah, we talked about that once on the show before, and I still haven't seen it yet.
I love this movie so much. It really does not have much of a plot. It is about a kind of... it's amazing. It's seriously, I mean, it's very small contained, but it's about this hospital, and it's kind of a rural hospital at the edge of town, and there's a very kind of midnight skeleton crew staff working. And they're all kind of doing their own thing. So they're isolated. Like one guy's over here practicing his stitches, and then somebody's over here doing paperwork. And so they're all just kind of spread out. And this guy gets wheeled in who has this horrible gooey infection, and no one really knows what to do with it. And he is like slowly dissolving, but whatever he has starts spreading through the entire hospital, this like skeleton crew, in the form of not only like a body horror, but also madness. So they start kind of going insane at the same time, and they start seeing things. And the whole movie is infused with this green light. Like that's how they represent that the disease has spread, is this green light spreads throughout the hospital. And again, it's a really small plot. It's literally just a disease spreading through a hospital with a lot of hallucinogenic stuff. But it is so fascinating and really gory. But I love it. I think it's great.
Cool.
Well, that was also a cool play on the new Planet of the Apes movies. I thought was like the way that was kind of built up, how we got eradicated, the humans, and then another good monkey, 12 Monkeys, is like got from La Jetée. It's a great backstory. That he has to travel back because humans are gone. It's a really great hook for why to make a sci-fi time travel movie, because we no longer exist, and the only way to go back is to find a cure for that thing. I think that's a really fun movie.
Oh yeah.
And again, a lot of them aren't horror. Like there's like real things like The Band Played On, which is like really scary because they're trying to find a cure for AIDS, and you get the feeling some people are holding out information and you have different countries not working well together, and you're like, that's scary.
You still get into, because you get in corporations and pharmaceutical corporations, and you had like the French were developing one thing that was finding success, but then the American pharmaceutical corporations were like, no, they can't be the ones who do this.
True horror. That's the thing. And so it's all coming from, I think, a real place.
No, one of the scariest things, real life experiences that I had, talking about AIDS, I did Angels in America in college, and it's a great play written by Tony Kushner, and about the AIDS outbreak epidemic in New York City and the homosexual population. And our vocal coach was this, really awesome actor and guy who'd lived in New York in the 80s. And he's like, just to give you some perspective of how bad it was in the homosexual population in the 80s. He's like, I had a wonderful apartment that oversaw the Hudson River I had 3 roommates, and I had to move out because they all died.
Wow.
And it was just like, it was a real epidemic. Yeah. And but it was,
and things moved so quickly then compared to now.
And also because of the media, the exposure, and Ronald Reagan never said the word AIDS until 1987 or something. And because we weren't yet quite at the 24-hour news cycle, there was still a lot of ways to distract ourselves. And if it's so contained to one specific group that people don't care about that much, then it's really easy to ignore it. And it's terrifying. I mean, that's real life terror. That's not.
Well,
very
and I think
fun.
that's usually where we do draw from. Interesting horror films are coming from. Oh, this is like I know a lot of people are like really OCD with cleanliness and things, and it's that idea that one time you didn't clean your hands, something came in. You know what I mean? Something from such a simple idea.
Sure.
There's a movie that it didn't really work for me, but the book is just fantastic. There was that movie Enemy a couple years last year with Gyllenhaal, based on
Prisoners.
Jose Saramago, the novelist that it's based on. He's kind of like this generation. He might have just died. Kafka is very Kafkaesque, and he had this book called Blindness, which was just
phenomenal,
a knockout of a book. And the movie's just
with Julianne Moore.
Yeah. But the idea
the
that
book
everyone
is
goes blind,
amazing, except for one person. There's one person in it.
It's
who
terrifying,
can say,
and it's just that whole adage, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Literally, you can control the situation, but she pretends to be blind
so
because she doesn't stand out. But
there's
some one character, trying to take advantage of all the people, and it's just it's a scary movie. That could have been to me a much more of a real horror film. I think you could have pushed that material to make sense. Instead, they try to go for the Oscar bait type, and it just
the book
doesn't
was
make sense.
So extreme and disgusting and
bad things are
gritty
happening
and
to people,
gross.
And
then what it turned into on screen was just it was Oscar bait.
Some things are hard to translate.
On that same note, though, Children of Men is one of the best movies of the last 10, 12 years, and some of the sequences in that movie are unbelievable. Quaron is like the tracking shots that go through tanks and like apartment buildings that go on forever. I just, my producer brain can't handle those scenes. Like, what the fuck?
And a terrifying opening scene. I mean, really, quite a shock.
And
plays with that same thing of like, what if this was no longer possible and then there was one person who could,
I want to name a few. I wrote down a couple that I've never seen before. So just out of curiosity, I was like, oh, I never heard of that one. That's interesting. So maybe if anybody's seen any of these, you can tell me.
Right.
There's one from 1985 called Warning Sign, and it stars Sam Waterston.
I do. I have it. I own it. I've never seen it, though.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but I know of it.
Yeah, I have the DVD, which I think might be bootleg, but
Josh has seen it.
Oh, yeah, man, that's awesome.
Waterston, bro. Waterston.
That should be the stock answer.
It's on the poster. Oh, yeah, man, it's awesome.
It's just like they filmed hell.
Yeah. Bro, that's nasty.
1978, The Grapes of Death, which is a Gene Roland movie. But I've never been into his movies. So.
And I have to say, most Gene Roland films move at like a snail's pace.
Yes.
Like, seriously, it's like 5 minutes of actual filmmaking is like an entire film for him. And they'll be like 120 minutes long. There are only two like Roland films that I can really tolerate, and one of them is Grapes of Death, which is about this wine grape orchard. I think they're called orchards in France, where the stuff that they're spraying vineyards. Thank you. The stuff that they're spraying on the grapes to keep the bugs away starts kind of infecting people.
You have been corrected.
Quit it with your fancy words.
I'm looking at the.
Do I get your PhD if I do one more?
Go fuck yourself, Kane. I don't have it yet.
Damn.
Anyways, but the pesticides that they're putting on the vineyards starts kind of changing people and
metamorphosizing.
It still
I preferred the
moves
sequel,
very
The Grapes
slowly.
of Death Phase 2.
You got to see the poster for it. Well, first of all, like the French title is like Le Raisins de la Mort.
Yes, Raisins de la Mort.
But then
I like that.
Ooh, my alarm went off. But it's like a cartoon of a hand grabbing a screaming girl, and there's just blood squeezing through his fingers.
Into the grapes.
It's pretty badass.
Later,
That's actually a really good design.
it inspired the California Raisins that came later. There was a saxophone on there.
Animated them.
But yeah, it still is not moving at the pace of a normal film, but it's at least going somewhere.
I don't know about
What are the other ones?
You've got me at Grapes of Death.
Carriers from 2009.
I watched that. It had the guy from
Chris Pine.
Chris Pine.
Pine.
Yeah. It was okay.
Yeah.
It didn't feel very horror-y, but it was like well made. It was slick.
Is it in the vein of like Contagion and Outbreak?
It's actually got some similarities to your film, but without the gore. Yeah, it's got that similar idea that people are passing around. I saw it like in a Redbox on Redbox.
I was going to say its distribution definitely benefited from being, I think, the movie he shot before Star Trek.
I think it was.
And then they released it right after.
Yeah, exactly.
The one I'm curious about, actually, it's something that Lionsgate put out in 2006. It's called Right at Your Door.
Yes,
I've never heard of it.
It's Rory Cochrane.
I watched the trailer and I thought it looked really good. Actually,
Yeah, it's Rory. It's when right before he got cast in Oculus. It was one of the movies that we watched, and
okay.
it's a good central performance. It is super small. I believe it's a couple that realize that there's like major
Fallout.
The cover
Fallout
looks
film.
like Fallout. There's someone in that very much the same style. I'm sure they were going for that Fallout 3 audience.
Probably, yeah.
The covers look very similar. It's like, oh, is it Fallout 3 the movie? It's like, no, it's right at your door.
Yeah.
It's solid. It was on Netflix for a while.
Nice.
Yeah, I just like, that's the other interesting thing is where do you, depending on budget or whatever, like where do you take that story? Like where do you pick up?
Yeah.
If you just have a couple and a limited budget, then let's pick up exactly where the virus starts.
Right.
And it's just about two people trying to find each other or whatever it might
exactly.
be.
It's unplanned, but I just realized that Fear the Walking Dead is exactly what we're talking about.
It's
totally. Literally the birth of a virus. You see people coughing. So it's like interesting that, because we still don't know technically how it started, I don't think, from any of the Walking Dead. I don't think we know kind of where it is, but we still don't know exactly the origin.
I don't even know if they've talked about it in the comics. I mean, I've quit so long ago.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
They've never addressed it.
But this one feels more like that because it is literally the origin. So you're seeing it play out like as if people are just getting sick and not coming to school. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. We'll see if it picks up steam though.
Right.
There's one from 2009, which I had disregarded for a while, but it's actually pretty good, called The Thaw.
Oh, yeah,
I think we talked about this before.
I've definitely pimped this one before. It's
one of those Val Kilmer ones. That's
which
right.
usually if I see his name on a horror film, I'm like, I'll hold on that one. And plus, this was part of a bulk release. It was back when like all of the major distribution companies, it was like 8 films to die for.
It's Ghost House Pictures.
Ghost House Pictures, that's it.
Ghost House Underground.
And so it kind of got buried, but it's a cool plot. And I mean, Val Kilmer's still a little Val Kilmer-y in it.
How dare you.
But it's a really cool setup, and it's got some really cool creature effects in it too, because it's not really a creature, it's more like a parasite, but it's about and I guess it's quite topical right now. The polar ice caps are melting, all of the glaciers are melting, and it unveils when they're melting back. It's a team of scientists who are there, kind of researching the melt and global warming, and it unearths a woolly mammoth. And when the woolly mammoth starts thawing, these parasites start getting all over everybody, but they don't really realize it at first. But then they start spreading and getting bigger and everything, and it kind of takes off from there. But it's definitely it's very. If you like The Bay, you'll like this. So it kind of falls in that same vein.
On that same note, could you actually say that John Carpenter's The Thing is a viral movie?
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, because if we already mentioned Splinter, which is similar to The Thing, and obviously The Thing, and then God, what was the one I was just thinking of that reminded me of that? Anyway,
when he's remembering it, but Leviathan is still it's like The Thing underwater, but they actually describe it as like a virus.
I haven't seen that movie in forever.
Mick Garris is at home right now going, waiting.
I know. I have it right here.
I've got it right here too. 1994, The Stand.
The Stand.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Which
Gary Sinise
is a little bit different because it kills everyone all at once. And then everyone else is just kind of like all the survivors are left. But there's no progression or anything like that in The Stand. Like you just open and Don't Fear the Reaper's playing and everybody in the world is dead.
But again, that's picking up at a specific point.
You're right.
Yeah, it's all choice. I think that's the only way to tell these stories now is to choose your moment.
Honestly, and I find it in his work, I'm not sure that the progression is something that Stephen King is necessarily interested in. I think he's interested in what happens after or how we respond to it. I don't think the outbreak is something that King necessarily cares about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Speaking of picking up way after, The Great Doomsday by Neil Marshall.
Oh,
yes.
Which
I read
actually
that
I'm currently borrowing from Josh, and I haven't watched yet. Yeah, I have your copy at my house.
You're a fan, Josh?
I love that movie. I mean, I think our movie, not that I wrote our script, but I think our movie takes a little bit of a genre twisting turn towards the end of our movie, which I enjoy. Like, I love Doomsday. Like, I was just writing a treatment for a band, and I was like just swiping Doomsday images left and right. I think this movie's so awesome.
Wow.
I still have your DVD. I'll give it back.
We're also leaving out the Eli Roth opus, Cabin Fever.
Oh,
Sure. Rider Strong.
And actually, I'll throw this one in now, which I've been trying to get Elric to watch for years, and I think he actually borrowed my VHS tape for a while and then gave it back. No.
I meant to bring up The Happening. It's on my list.
Hey, donkey.
It's the trees, Rob. The bees.
Donkey's got it. Hey, donkey.
They're making people kill themselves.
I never saw The Happening, but I love the Saturday Night Live skit. It was like my favorite ever. With Mark Wahlberg talking to animals. I was just like, oh, it's so good.
Amazing.
I think that's one of the few movies that, like, as soon as I was done watching it, I watched it again.
The Happening?
The Happening?
It was so funny.
Is it good though?
Yeah.
Is it worth watching?
It kills me. Well, just like because Mark Wahlberg's a teacher. His whole thing where he's just like, you guys read that New York Times article about all those bees dying? Like,
the bees.
He's the guy that sees it.
Like kids are like, oh yeah, man, New York Times. That's fucking. I'm into that. I'm a high school kid. And then he's like, why do you think all these bees are dying? And one kid's like, I don't know, like polar ice caps, like global warming. Yeah, interesting. The temperature raises a few degrees, well, but then maybe whatever. Like, what do you think? And like some kids like
exposition.
Some kids like, a virus. He's like, yeah, but then why aren't they? Whatever. And then one kid's like, maybe it's an unexplainable happening that no one can whatever, like it's inexplicable. And he's like, that's the right answer.
You sir, you get the A. Gold star for you. He's sure.
We don't know how to explain it. A+.
Polar ice caps that are pissing the bees off.
So it's like, what kind of a teacher are you? Where you're like, yeah, hey, I want to just teach you about ambiguity right now.
That's really good.
But the movie I was trying to get, I was trying to get ours to watch People Who Own the Dark, which is this trippy little film about
Spanish film, right?
It's a Spanish film. A whole bunch of rich weirdos gather in this mansion.
Did you talk about this a couple weeks ago?
I've talked about it on air, I think probably about a year ago.
Recently, like 2 episodes ago.
Okay, it was 2 episodes ago.
Super fan.
I honestly, because episode.
But rich weirdos gather in a mansion and decide to have this very kind of like Eyes Wide Shut-esque orgy where they've hired all these girls and everything. And then while they're there, the bomb drops. And so they're all like completely closed in because they're in the basement of this mansion having an orgy and the walls are stone. But then the next day they emerge and discover that whatever type of bomb dropped, it caused everyone in the world to go blind and also become kind of mutant. Like they all look kind of fucked up, but mostly they're blind. But then they get angry at those with sight and decide to try to remove everyone's eyes.
Kind of like blindness.
Yeah. And so the people who are in the dark, because at nighttime they have the upper hand because they can see.
Yeah, it is that extinction event thing, like that takes a lot of different forms. It's Armageddon. Hey, Brian Collins, we're talking about Armageddon.
He doesn't listen.
He doesn't
He only listens when he's on.
I will tell him
when he's on.
I drop Armageddon at hour 1 of Killer POV.
A really fun one. It's not a movie. It's a comic book. But Why the Last Man?
Oh yeah.
I know that one.
Where there's a plague that happens where it kills all the women except for one guy.
All the women except for one guy.
Sorry. It kills all the men.
Okay.
Sorry.
Some gender identity issues there. That's cool. It's cool. We'll work through it.
Yeah, so it kills all the men except for this one guy who's just a wisecracking dude, who has a monkey. But it's like he has like all these women want to have sex with him or murder him or whatever.
He's the last man.
He's the last man.
Well, and they just finally did a feature adaptation. I think the trailer just came out for Z for Zachariah, which was a book I was reading in middle school.
Craig Sobel's new film.
That's right, it is Craig Sobel, and it's a Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Yeah, the trailer to that looked really
good.
strong, like 3 good actors in the very kind of. It looked like a Harold Pinter setup. Where there's only 2 of them, and then one more person comes back, and you're like, oh shit, it's Chris Pine.
Yes, Chris Pine, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and
a lot of sexual tension. I can't remember the actress was.
Good.
It did look good, and then I looked it up, and it looked like it had played somewhere where it was getting like rave reviews. And look, he's an interesting filmmaker because each film has gotten a lot better than the previous.
What
I feel
else
like
has he done?
He did the one where Pat Healy's calling people, making you touch yourself at McDonald's. Nate, fill in the blank. Compliance. There you go.
If you ever want to mess somebody up, just tell them to watch Compliance and don't tell them anything about it.
Oh yeah.
I used to work at a restaurant, and I was like, it's like, yeah, corporate restaurants suck, man. Here's a movie you should watch. Go home and watch Compliance. It's on Netflix.
Wow. Now, have any of you guys been watching the comedy show Last Man on Earth?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's hilarious. I love it.
Oh no, Will Forte's a genius.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one's amazing.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
There's no more fun than the bubonic plague, so I'm going to throw down a couple bubonic plague ones.
Go Black Death.
Well, Black Death.
Black Death.
Black Death. Chris Smith is a solid film. If you want to see
Black Death Christmas.
Chris Smith.
So Black Death Christmas.
I know.
I'm going to make that next year.
It's a combination of Black Christmas and Black Death. You mean the Sean Bean Black Death?
I like to think it's a prequel to Game of Thrones. Like character just walked in.
It feels like it really.
It kind of weirdly, not at all. It kind of felt like what Episode 1 of Star Wars should have been, because the end of that movie feels like the birth of Darth Vader.
Now, speaking of Game of Thrones, we haven't discussed Grayscale yet, so
right.
Yeah.
Grace what?
Grayscale. It's Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's the disease that kind of turns you lizardy.
Yeah. I didn't even remember that. There's
I'm way behind on Game of Thrones.
There's a top-notch movie that very few people have seen here. I talked about it with Charles de la Rizica, because it was by Vincent Ward before, just the thing that more or less got him the attention to direct Alien 3, and it's called Navigator. It's a medieval odyssey, and it was like, actually it might have been the second or third movie I saw as a kid in New Zealand theaters, and it's really big. Like, it's for a New Zealand film, it starts off, it's set in during the Black Plague, and there's like a group of people, and it's all shot like, I know Werner Herzog's like his hero at that point in his career, and it's like, this little boy, and they're basically, trying to find some cure, and they kind of go through this weird, I can't remember if it was like a cave or something, and the kid falls through, and the group of them fall through, and then they're in like contemporary New Zealand streets, and they hit like a freeway, and it's coming, but it's all straight, like really serious, and they have to try to get to this cross to put it on this church to kind of break the plague, and it's really like high-end art. I think it was at Cannes and stuff, but it's also really like, it's like I feel like every few years somebody makes a visionary film where you're like, God, where did that come from? It was one of those movies, but because it's from New Zealand, probably less seen here, but it was enough for producers to give the guy Alien 3. There was no other reason except that movie. He made a great film called Vigil 2, but no one would have seen that. But it's really interesting.
He didn't direct Alien 3.
He did. I mean,
okay. Yeah. I was like,
he worked up
you keep
the
saying this
story.
And I'm confused.
And was the one. So we did a whole episode where we, kind of went in depth on what happened.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's just, it's interesting. I think for anyone who you should seek that out if you're curious why someone like him was picked out of nowhere, because it's pretty fat. And in terms of this stuff, it's really interesting. I haven't seen it in so long. I can't remember how it related to curing things, but it was surprising. As a kid, I remember going, "Oh my God, how'd they get to Auckland?" And also seeing New Zealand on screen for one of the first times, like people from a different time period and they're English suddenly walk through and they're on streets that I lived on. It was very strange, kind of out of body, but it's a good movie. And then another one in terms of art house, one of my other favorite movies of all time. And to me, this director has never made a film that's even close to this. His first film, which is Safe by Todd Haynes, is like the micro version of a plague movie. It's almost like the one person suffering. There's just a shot where she's just like sitting in her bedroom on the edge of her bed, thinking she's got something. It's all about the paranoia. And that, to me, he's an interesting director. But that movie really, of its time, I just remember really noticing his voice as a filmmaker. But I really liked it. Julianne Moore it was one of the first things I really noticed her in.
On New Zealand films, Perfect Creature, which I know you're not a huge fan of, but I love that film, and it's kind of a post-apocalyptic future. It's like steampunky. But the cool thing about it that I always liked is that because we kind of played around with genetics so much, and all these plagues had happened over time, some people evolve into vampires, and the vampires are no longer able to get the plagues, but the basic flu has grown to pandemic levels and kills within days. So you're seeing people suffering from these like horrible flu outbreaks to where they have to quarantine entire neighborhoods. And the vampires have been selected to kind of run the communities because they can't get the plagues.
I never saw it, but I heard excellent things about Daybreakers.
I liked it.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Did that deal kind
with Ethan Hawke?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I liked this.
But yeah, that kind of dealt with on a vampires, but like almost like a viral level.
Yeah, it was, and they were curing, and Sam Neill worked at the place where they were like manufacturing these cures. It was cool. Like it had a big vision behind it. Like it doesn't all the way get there by the end, but 3/4 is really great.
I love those guys. Like was it their first movie, Undead?
Yeah, the Australian.
Oh yeah.
That's fun. I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen what's the new one that you and Bekah both liked, the time travel movie with Ethan Hawke.
Oh shit! Can't remember the name.
Equilibrium?
No, it came out this year, and Ethan Hawke's
got the girl from Jezebel in it that I love so much.
Sarah Snook.
I can't fucking remember.
It's a long word, and I don't remember what it's called.
It was recommended to me by Mike Mendez.
Pandemonium or something like that?
No.
You saw it this year, like a few weeks ago.
I'm Googling it.
I'm sure you did.
Something real pretentious.
I saw it twice because I watched it. I watched it once by myself, and then I watched it again with Johnny Higgins and Dave Parker. And the second time, I thought it was like even 10 times better than the first time.
Yeah, I've seen it make a lot of people's favorite lists this year, so I'm curious to see it.
Yeah.
It's an S word.
I don't know if I would consider it horror, but it's definitely one of my favorite ones this year.
But what's it called, Bekah?
I'm looking it up right now.
God. All right, well, while you're doing that, I'm going to mention Demons from 1985, which I just saw again because that's Infection by Mask.
Oh, yeah.
Predestination. Sorry.
Predestination. That's what it was.
Predestination.
Not even close with an S.
Not an S word.
I've never seen it.
I said it was a P word. Listen back.
Yes. I'm looking it up, people.
Bekah, we got it. It's predestination.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'm not even paying attention because I'm looking it up. so
All right.
bad.
You're right. I like the Infection by Mask and Demons. That's
Yes, I think Infection by Mask is really good. And since we're having Mulberry Street Pizza, Mulberry Street the movie,
I don't know that one.
It
which
was
is great.
the Duplass?
No,
I'm sorry.
no.
It was why can't I remember his
they
name
are
now?
brothers,
The
right?
guy.
Jim Mickle, who did
it's Mickle.
We Are What We Are.
Stakeland and We Are What We Are. Yeah,
Yes.
it's his first movie. Larry Fessenden in it, and it's
Debbie Rashad's in it too.
yeah, and it's kind of a low, like it's a New York-based zombie movie, but they're turning into rat people, not zombies.
Yikes.
And get infected, and you kind of turn rat-like. It's pretty amazing.
And I was living. I
Interesting.
remember I was living in New York when that came out. And Mulberry Street is actually very nice. Like it's in the middle of Soho, and it's a lovely little street. But yeah, once you live in New York, you understand the rat problem.
You got to
beyond
see David
belief.
Lynch's commercial for New York back in I think it was the early '90s. And it's all just like close up of, I think they're cockroaches or rats, and it's all about like disease, and it's really disturbing.
The weird
With
and
Lynch.
this is so like telling of New York and kind of my creepiness when I first got there. Right before we get a thunderstorm in New York, the pressure will change. And I mean, it's like anywhere. We don't have thunderstorms
that's
in
not
here.
just in New York.
No, that's not
That's
just in New York. But when it does that, it also changes in the subway tunnels and the steam tunnels. And I guess it becomes like unbearable, or maybe they're attracted to the humidity, but it's something to do with the pressure. So right as the pressure is changing right before a thunderstorm, everything will come pouring out of the steam vents. You'll just see cockroaches just pouring out, and rats and everything. I don't know what it is, but it's pretty
horrific.
intense.
Yeah.
So.
It's funny, we haven't named like I wonder if no one here's seen it, but it's like considered the classic movie. The Andromeda Strain is like the key,
right, yeah.
and I've never seen it. I think I started watching once and I got bored.
My
and
mom
turned
always
off.
loved that movie,
Yeah.
but she was a big sci-fi buff. But
It's early
she still is.
or
But,
very
yeah.
early Michael Crichton.
Yeah.
But
I
I've never
saw it.
seen it, unfortunately.
I read the book, but I don't remember.
And
it.
no
was
one
a
mentioned
long time
Resident
ago.
Evil.
Yeah, there's a reason.
Oh, you didn't? I remember liking the first Resident Evil.
It's good.
I thought it was fun when I saw the first one.
Yeah.
Or sometimes if you have like a monkey rat that bites you, that could start a plague.
Yeah, that could.
Your mother ate my dog.
Dead Alive totally counts.
Yeah, it does.
Sure,
Brain
sure,
dead or
sure.
whatever.
I guess if it starts with a bite, we go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
why
all get
not?
infected. The priest, everybody.
What about the rabbit and Meet the Feebles? Actually, I wonder if that's where Eric England's idea for Contracted comes from, because it's kind of all in her head for a while, but then it becomes real, and then it's not. It was just a
Meet
fluke.
the Feebles?
Eric
So
England, if
you
you're
have-
still listening, I challenge you. Did you take your whole story from the
Meet
rabbit
the
storyline to
Feebles?
Meet the Feebles? And if so, you're way more awesome than I could ever imagine, because that is fad. That's a solid reference.
All righty. Well, it's about that time of night.
Yeah, I've had
but-
way too much pizza.
But Contracted Phase 2, what's the release date?
Yeah, when
and
can we check
story?
this thing out?
It's being put out by IFC Midnight. It's I think it's going to be in select theaters.
So like there's going to be an Arena Cinema here in
Yeah.
LA.
Nice.
September 4th.
But then September 4th, VOD and stuff like that. So
Yep.
September 4th,
Watch
VOD, limited
it.
theaters.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
check it out.
yeah.
I even liked it.
Thanks, Elric.
Way to go.
Not even lying.
It's super fun. I don't know. I mean, it's it is what it is. It's a low budget sequel.
It's a fast, fun, crazy movie.
I just think, I'm super proud of it. I mean, I know, like we said, like Eric is like not the biggest supporter of it. I think for political reasons and whatever. And it's tough when somebody takes your baby and I feel like a stepdad where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be dating your mom now.
your mom being an STD historian.
Being a vagina magnet.
Vagina magnet movie.
Come on, no spoilers about 3.
And so, but I think it's, we watch with an audience, like, it's just super fun. Like, it does not get boring.
And Morgan gets angry.
I get
the
pretty
score,
angry.
the score is done by Jonathan Snipes, who
Who did
did Room
Oh,
237.
Starry
That's
Eyes.
solid.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's probably all those
great.
aesthetic elements that were for me the improvement in that sense, because it's I do love a good aesthetic film, and you have that, which is great.
I was really happy with the editing as well, to be totally honest. The
All right, you
editing
sold
was
me.
really
Go home and
solid.
watch it.
Yeah.
If they do a third, would you be invited if it did well, or you'd have to keep moving?
We'll see about
You'll
that.
see. Okay, cool. Fingers crossed.
All right, well, thanks,
Awesome, guys. We will see you next week for
Our pleasure.
some fun effects. Yeah.
Baby.